Hi, this is Simon Obstall and welcome to another tutorial for Apple Motion. And today I want to take a look at creating this spiky particle wave effect. So let's take a look. So the first thing I want to do is to create a source particle, and I've created a new project that is 40 by 400. I've got a frame rate of 24 frames a second and a duration of 5 seconds. So I'm going to come over to the library and generators, and I'm going to grab membrane, and let's come over to the inspector and let's set the speed to 0. Now, because we've got this small size, you'll see that it's very jagged, and we can sort that out by coming over to blur and Gaussian blur, setting the amount up to 64 and setting the horizontal down to 0. Actually, maybe 64 was overkill. Let's go for 32. I think that's probably okay. So the next thing I want to do is give it a little bit of animation. So I'm going to select the group and set it to fixed resolution. I'm going to come over to filters and distortion and wave, and I want to animate the wave, but first of all I just want to set up the wavelength. I'm going to go for something like 240, like so, and then I'm going to animate the offset. So first of all I'm going to set it to 0, and then I'm going to add parameter behavior ramp, and I'm going to set the end value to 22. And the point of that will be to make sure that it is looping like so. Something's gone slightly wrong with my membrane. I think I just need to reduce that width down to 20. That's looking better. So now it's not going outside the bounds of the box. And I could probably increase the height of it a little bit. Let's try increasing that. Just, we don't want to go outside the bounds. There you go. I think that's pretty good. So we're up to about 515, 512. So this is good, and we can render this out. So let's come to Share, Export Movie. For our settings, we want to choose ProRes 4444, and we want to render it to our assets folder. So let's call this membrane wave particle, and we'll render that out. So then what we're going to do is make a new project. So for this new project, I'm going with 1920 1080, 24 frames a second, and a duration of 30 seconds. So let's import that asset that we've made, membrane wave particle. There it is. Now, the one thing I want to do is I want to move its anchor point, so it's either at the top or the bottom. So let's enable the anchor point tool, and let's drag it out to the top of the box like that. So then what we're going to do is we're going to make an emitter out of this particle. So let's come to Object and Make Particles. So there we go. It looks like that. So then we want to actually make a source object. So we don't want any of these defaults. We are going to make our own geometry to create the source shape. So I'm just going to temporarily turn off the emitter. I'm going to come down to the Bezier tool, and I'm going to click here and then here and drag, here and drag, down here and drag, and over here. So I want to create this sort of basic oxbow lake type shape, and then enter to close it up. So we don't really care too much about what it looks like. Just for the sake of argument, we need an outline rather than a fill, which will be confusing. So just coming over to the geometry, let's just make sure that X1 position is negative 960 and 0.5 is negative 960 over there. I think that's good enough. I'm not going to agonize about the shape. So let's turn it off. Let's turn back on our emitter, and let's select geometry for the shape, and let's drag in our Bezier. Lots that we need to do now to set this up. So first of all, we're going to turn on 3D, and then for the longitude, latitude, and range, we're going to set all of these to 0. Then we need to come down and set a birth rate. So I'm going to go for 750, come down to the life, set that to be 4.5, have 1 for the life randomness. For the speed, I'm going to go with 700. Let's turn on align angle. Let's have a bit of spin. So let's have 12 for the spin. Oh, and I needed to set the angle here. Let's set the angle to 90 for that. Okay, so let's keep on coming down. Let's turn on additive blend. I'm going to come back to the color mode shortly. First of all, I want to set the scale to 30 and the scale randomness to 150. And I think I might just turn off random start frames. It doesn't make a huge difference. I think I'm going to prefer it with it off. But so now we've got this, and that's kind of an interesting start. So then I'm going to add to the rotation of the emitter a ramp behavior. And I'm going to set the end value to 720. And that's going to make things a lot more interesting, as you can see. So we've got this sort of interesting swirling effect. You'll notice that it all looks a bit rubbish at the start. So I think I'm going to come into roughly 3 seconds like that, and then mark play range in, so that we're only really going to start seeing things from that point. So a reminder of that is what we're looking at. So I'm going to just quickly add a camera, and that's going to switch everything to 3D, and that's good. I'm going to come to properties, and let's open up the position and set that Z position to possibly 2000. Yeah, I think that's going to be good for our purposes. And I think I might also just, while I'm at it, add a camera sweep, because this could be pretty interesting. So let's start with -45 and end with +45. And that's really going to help with this sort of sense of depth, I think. So what we can also do is we can come to our Bezier and we can add a shape, oscillate shape behavior to that. And I'm just going to set the amplitude to 90. And that is just going to give us a little bit more of a kind of wavy swirl. So then let's come back into our emitter. Actually, first of all, I just need to zero out this position. Let's zero out the position so we're in the center like that. Probably makes more sense. So as I said, we were going to have a look at this color mode. So I'm going to switch to over life for the color mode. Open up the gradient. Click here to create a new opacity tag. Click at the end to create another one over there. So that last one that I've created, I'm going to set the opacity down to 0, so we're getting a fade off. I'm going to select the first one and set that opacity to 0, so we get a fade in as well. And let's just set up this opacity location, maybe go for 20 for that. So then let's think about the color. So let's lose one of these tags here. The remaining one, I think I want to go for something like this. It's entirely up to you what you go with for the color. I just kind of like this sort of look personally. So then we're getting this. The color really helps, I think, with the drama of it. I might also just add to this group a glow and neon. So that obviously brightens things up a great deal. And well, maybe just reduce the opacity down to that to 50% perhaps. So then I think what I want to do is I want to add an extra particle element. So I'm going to come down to the circle tool, F7 for the HUD just to set this up. I want a fill, no outline. I'm going to make that fill color white. So then I'm going to hold down the shift key and draw out a small circle like that, and then come to the geometry and maybe set that radius to 10. Then I'm going to select this particle cell here, and I'm going to right click duplicate, and I'm going to call this one circle. And we can drag the circle into there, turn off our original circle. So these circles are way too big. So let's adjust their scale down to maybe 10%, maybe even less. Let's go for 3%. And scale randomness, maybe go for 50. That's more like it. There you go. So that's looking quite nice. Then maybe reduce the speed down to 300, just so they clump more at the beginning. I think I quite like that. What else can we do? Oh, let's select our original membrane particle and come to behaviors and particles and scale over life. And let's switch to birth and death values and set this scale at birth to 50%, just so they increase in scale like that. So there you go. I think we've done most of what we need to do. So obviously this is just one way of setting this all up. There's an immense amount you can do to change the look of it. I would just point out that if we come into the angle for this membrane cell and we set it to 0, we get a very different distribution. Let's go for 180, different again, 270, different again. So that's worth playing with. You don't even have to go in increments of 90. Birth rate is going to make a lot of difference as well to the density of it. That's actually quite a nice look. But even a low birth rate is actually quite interesting as well. What else could we do? Oh, we could play with the scale randomness. So like we could increase that Y scale randomness to 300. That's quite nice. As I say, we turned off random start frames, but you might decide that you prefer that. It gives a slightly more random organic look. Just have a play, see what you come up with. So I hope that's been interesting. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you again soon.